I would rather do something challenging than something I like. I'd also rather be good at something challenging as opposed to just being good at something I like. I tend to lose interest in things that don't challenge me, even if I enjoy doing them. It's in the overcoming of the challenge, or at least the meeting of it, that I gain something. Simply liking or enjoying something isn't enough for me. The term I like for this type of behavior is reverse hedonism. Instead of seeking comfort like a hedonist, I seek discomfort to reverse those feelings. Think of it as breaking complacency in whatever form that might be in a given situation. I enjoy learning and diversity. I especially enjoy training programs and goal setting and what gets referred to as the grind. But it's not much of a grind to me because I actually like it. Well, I like the discomfort, a subtle distinction. I like the feeling of control in proactively choosing when things happen rather than just reacting to everything as it happens to me. The beauty in embracing discomfort is that it's often self-initiated and one of the best ways to ward off complacency, particularly in your personality. YouTube is like that for me. I don't actually like it, but I find it challenging. Putting myself on camera, talking about myself, promoting my content, I don't like most of that process, but I like the challenge. I'd much rather go back to writing about these things in my personal journals than talking about them to the public. But writing isn't quite the challenge that video is. It's in the challenge that I find meaning in the effort to keep putting out videos. I first started YouTube to get out of my own head because, quite honestly, I spend entirely too much time there. Making videos seemed like a good way to empty my mind of all the thoughts and opinions I have. Putting myself on video was secondary, but also good for me because I don't enjoy doing it at all. But in the spirit of personal growth, I did it. It did help me grow and continues to do so. I learned about cameras, I learned how to film, I learned how to edit, I learned how to upload. I learned how to maintain a channel. I learned a lot about myself in the process too. You just can't edit hundreds of hours of video of yourself without confronting some realities about your self-image or how you look or how you sound, but also how you move and how you talk, the words you use and the ones you don't, the eye contact to validate a point or the lack of it when you're feeling vulnerable. I find myself incredibly aware of these things now when I'm talking to people in real life, all because of my time spent editing videos of myself for this channel. I continue to do videos for that reason. Nonverbal communication is as essential to the messages I'm sharing as the words I choose to deliver it. I often feel like most of my content could easily be in a non-video format because the messages wouldn't necessarily change, but the impact of the messages likely would without the complementary nonverbal cues that I present as I speak to the camera. That's another reason why YouTube has been good for me. Not just to get me out of my own head, but to help me get over myself, to stop worrying about who I am and how I present to people because of worries brought on by social perfectionism. I tend to be quiet in real life. I can appear distant, detached, disengaged, and it can make me seem aloof, arrogant, or unapproachable. Add to that a flat affect and a lifetime of dysthymia. You get a person who is not only in their own head, but doesn't want to come out either. These topics don't need to be on video. I could just as easily put most of my content out as podcasts, for instance. They might even do better too, but podcasting isn't all that challenging to me. I actually like podcasting. And the listens, as opposed to the views, accumulate quickly. But it doesn't take a lot of skill development to successfully run a podcast. As a result, I am here doing videos because videos are challenging in ways podcasting never was for me. A lot of my bias toward challenging tasks is that I don't like being stuck in an identity. As in, I like doing different things, but not necessarily being known for them. No matter what I do with this YouTube channel, I will never be comfortable being a YouTuber. I prefer to see myself as a person who is on YouTube and not so much a YouTuber because I'm not sure that's the kind of validation I'm seeking. Not that there's anything wrong with that for those people who are trying to be YouTubers. It's just not for me. in the same way a lot of things aren't for me when I reflect on my past. Like policing, for instance. I was a police officer for 14 years and did everything from frontline emergency response to writing policing plans for the highest crime and disorder districts in my city. It was a good career when it was challenging, but I didn't like it. I stayed as long as I did because it was a challenging vocation that demanded higher order thinking for me to be successful at it. But when it wasn't challenging anymore, I left. Staying there to do less than challenging work made no sense at all. The cyclical nature of the career lost all appeal to me. I either needed to find new challenges within it or leave. So I left and went on to something new. If I'd have stayed in policing, that would have locked my identity in, because staying there in the absence of new challenges would have meant staying there for other reasons. One of the most typical being that police officers often just like being police officers for the social credit it affords them. But it's one of those careers that does tend to override almost every aspect of a person's life, and the work becomes the person and the person becomes the work. I don't really want to be known for my work identity, mostly because I don't derive a lot of self-worth from my employment responsibilities in a general sense. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that. I have a great deal of respect for people who lean into a professional identity, but I find that a lot of people who do have what I would call identity fatigue, especially as they get closer to the end of their careers. For example, I ran into a friend recently who is only a couple of years away from retiring. He will have full pension and honors for a life spent in policing. Amazing, right? But he was just looking forward to being done so that he could get a job working in a hardware store. He was so completely finished with policing that he just wanted it to be over and work a retirement job in something completely removed from being a police officer. He wanted to move on and not have to think about policing as a career and a culture anymore. That's identity fatigue. That's an existential burden that comes from having your life defined by something that took over your identity. You wake up each day to this sense that there has to be more to living than the work you do and the job you have, or at least you hope so. I know I did when I went into my 14th year. I remember thinking that the positions I was being offered were so far beneath my abilities at that point that the only reason to stay was so that I could continue to say I was a police officer. I was already fatigued with that identity to the point that leaving made more sense than anything, despite being an incredibly difficult decision to make. The easy choice was to stay. The challenging choice was to leave. Identity fatigue won out, and I retired well ahead of the usual tenure so that I could work on me, not just work for the sake of work. My friend is waiting for his full 25 years to be complete so that he can retire. By comparison, I completed 14 years and looked ahead to a career that lacked any meaningful challenges based on what was being offered to me. An early retirement did offer challenges that, even if I didn't know what I was going to do after I left, would be completely different from what I'd already accomplished in policing. It comes down to me accepting that staying wasn't going to be challenging. Leaving was. Identity fatigue and a preference for discomfort closed the door on my policing career. It was far and away the best decision I could have made for myself. I can't speak to his choice to stay as long as he's going to, any more than he can speak to my choice to leave early. All I can speak to is the impact that identity fatigue can have on a career that you once enjoyed as it starts to lose its appeal because it slowly replaces who you are at your core, or worse, makes you forget yourself entirely. It very quickly erodes any sense of urgency that might have made for a schema-saving attempt at something new, because of the complacency that a foreclosed identity inevitably falls prey to as time passes. Discomfort is to an evolving identity what complacency is to your personality being replaced by the title on your business card or the annual salary you file at tax time. Who you are is also more important than what you do. So please, for your own sake, you do you. If that means making a choice between comfort and discomfort, especially as it relates to your identity, make the hard choice. One thing I've noticed in my life and the lives of friends around me is that You either own your decisions and the outcomes that come from them, or your decisions and outcomes will own you. We often can't control what happens to us, but when it happens, we have far greater influence over that than we realize or probably even want to acknowledge.